I know you can't see me, and that's on purpose because it's dark. I'm in a car, and maybe I just don't want to show my face. But here's a question I have for the nation of Israel, and I mean this respectfully. Why is it that it seems like in the Bible when I read it, there's a lot of disobedience, or at least God sets up a plan for Israel, and Israel wants to do the opposition, and then it's just the byproduct of all that is typically more suffering for its people. Let's start off with the simple, the beginning of, well, it's not the beginning, but it's one of the stories that's famous. The way it works is Israel was not supposed to have a king. Eventually God decided, you know what, you want a king, I'll give you a king, and that's when Saul came along. Before that, they had judges, they had prophets. I mean, they had essentially, power wasn't centralized. It was being conducted by judges who were essentially, even if the people voted them in, it was divine. And these judges were making decisions on behalf of the people. And then they decided they wanted a king. And then this king, well, we know the story. God said, don't touch anything, during war, essentially. And they decided to keep stuff. And even Samuel said, hey, dude, God said don't touch anything. What are you doing? And the people forgot at the same time, like, who actually helped them. In other words, and this is why God warned against having a king, right? Because the people started to then pay attention or start believing that their power lied with the king. As long as a king is powerful and strong, then we're fine. And, that's obviously not the case. It all came from God. All power came from God. How many wars did the nation of Israel not, they pretty much, the odds were completely stacked against them. Completely. Yet here they go, forgetting all that. There were many wars that they won, that you read in the Bible, that they were not supposed to win. Statistically impossible to win. The other armies were bigger, stronger. Yet, here he was, God, delivering them a victory. And even then, he kept saying, you don't need a king, you've got judges, and you got me, it's all good in the hood. And that's not what happened. They wanted their king, so they got their king, and the king screwed up. But here comes the next part. God then gave them another king. In David, right? He was anointed by Samuel. And he showed his glory once again through David when he slayed the Goliath. A child, a shepherd who had no business being in the battlefield. There was no way that he could survive this, yet God delivered another victory for them. And you see this over and over and over again. So now I ask the question, and I ask this sincerely, because there's a divide right now in our country, and there's a group of Jews, Orthodox Jews, who believe that the state of Israel should not exist, that the Jews are supposed to be in the diaspora because of a punishment that God gave them in the Bible. Which is interesting, because with that logic, it means that the nation of Israel, without a nation, meaning without a Jewish state, it would still exist. So in other words, God gave Israel a mission. This is what chosen means, by the way. I don't think it means that they are preferred. It means you have a mission, and that's to be a light among the nations. And the only way to demonstrate that you're a light is to, I guess, live around the nations or within the nations. It doesn't mean that you're assimilating, but at some level, the nations need to be able to see you. And maybe that was the purpose. Yet, Israel then says, no, but we want a nation. So, anyways, 1948 comes along. Israel is now a country. So, am I reading it wrong? Is there a parallel between Israel wanting a king and now Israel wanting a country? In other words, God's pretty much saying, listen, you're a nation because I've chosen you to be priests among the world. And you're supposed to demonstrate to the world what, a godly world, what a godly people look like and what a godly world will look like, right? It's tikkun olam. Excuse me if I'm saying it wrong. I don't know Hebrew, but I know tikkun olam means to heal the world, essentially. You can't heal the world when you're too concerned of being too much like the world. In other words, you wanted a king, he gave you a king. Fine. Now you want a nation or a country. If it's true that God punished and sent the Jews in exile, which is what these rabbis believe. Again, I don't know all the Jewish theology and the full history, and I would love people to please rebuttal it. I want to learn more. But the connection I'm making is perhaps the nation of Israel is getting it all wrong. In other words, God doesn't want you to have a king because he doesn't want you to be like the rest of the world. You're supposed to be distinguished. This is the reason why people know Jews when they see them. They have a specific look, especially if you're religious. You're wearing a kippah. For those that don't know what a kippah is, it's a yarmulke. If you are a ultra-Orthodox, you have the peyot, I think it's called. It's the curls. You're wearing tzitzits. You're donning tefillin. You're doing things that are so different. And you do this every day. Different than the rest of the world would do. Yet somehow, when it comes to, let's call it power, you want to be like the rest of the world. You want a king. You want a country. And have you thought about maybe that's not what God wants in the first place? So I don't know. I would love to hear your comments. Let me know.